People say it's hard to get into cybersecurity to break in, but I mean, if you look in your Discord, you've seen that people are showing that it's definitely possible. I mean, honesty is a good policy. You've seen it in, if you ever read the Discord about people who get jobs, right? And they talk about their interviews.
Today, I'll be interviewing Derek. He went through the cybersecurity course and ended up getting a job as an information security officer, and he has no technical or IT background, so he did a really good job breaking into the field. I had him on the channel once before. It's been about 6 or 7 months working in his current position as an information security officer, so I'm going to talk to him a bit about that, like his day-to-day and what he's doing and whatnot. And we'll talk about what he did to get this job, like the steps he had to take, and we're just going to cover some general mindset and advice for those watching who might have imposter syndrome or something like this. So yes, enjoy the interview. Hey everybody, Josh here, a YouTuber and cybersecurity course instructor, and we have Derek here. He was a guest on the channel previously. He had gone through the cybersecurity course and gotten hired as an information security officer. Was that back in September?
September, yep, 2023.
Cool. So he agreed to come back on the channel and kind of talk about his experience working since then. So thank you so much for coming back. Really appreciate you. It's good to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So how has your job been? Like the information security officer is kind of a cool title. So I guess, do you want to talk about how it was ramping up and like what you're working on now?
Yeah, so I mean, kind of like I expected it to go. It's like getting thrown off a cruise ship and just being told to swim, especially for the fact that I didn't really have much prior experience besides the course. And, learning I did actually try Hack Me kind of helped a lot too. But really, I think the hardest part about it is that there's nobody to help you in a position like that because everyone's so busy, the other executives, right? Like we have a chief information officer. He's so busy and I don't report to him, so I don't really have much communication. I actually report to the risk management officer. She's had a lot of experience doing governance work, but she doesn't have any technical experience at all. So it is kind of like a weird balancing thing because I was expected to do a lot of technical related duties, but a lot of the time I have to go and ask other people who are really busy for help, and it's kind of one of those weird things where I really just was left to my own to learn a lot of the things. Like I said, she had a lot of governance experience, so she was really good at that type of stuff, like writing policies, and when it comes to like auditing and risk assessments. But yeah, I mean, like everything else, it was really just I had to do a lot of my own learning, which was challenging, but is also rewarding as well, feeling accomplished. But I feel like that kind of goes for any job where doing your own self-learning it's going to help out no matter what.
Yeah, and that's kind of been the trend for me in my cybersecurity jobs. I usually have someone who, like the person I report to, pretty much knows how to do everything that I need to do. That's like kind of the only difference. But it's a lot of like self-learning for me, and the company doesn't always actually know like 100% what they want you to do. So you just gotta kind of figure it out, I guess, along the way. So do you have like people that report to you that you kind of manage them, or are you kind of like an individual contributor? Is like a mix?
So I'm in charge of change management process. I'm in charge of incident response, but when it comes to that, it's more so just making sure everyone knows their roles and responsibilities because IT, like our network engineers, they're really smart guys and they know what they're doing. So it's not like I'd be telling them what to do because they know what to do. You know what I mean? But really just making sure that the workflows are in place and everyone knows who they're contacting and that type of thing. So that's one thing. And then I also do security awareness training. Nobody reports to me for that, but I keep track of the metrics and try to make sure that people are failing less and less phishing tests, which I've been successful at. So not really anyone reporting to me. Yeah.
But you're responsible for it's kind of like you're a program it reminds me of program manager, where you're kind of responsible for like what people are doing, but you can't like command them to do it, kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's funny too because a lot of people just naturally, I think, have a disdain for cybersecurity, especially governance, because I mean the thing is, right, and I learned this during CISSP, is like cybersecurity is really your support role for the company. Like you have to support their goals and objectives and generating value for them, but you also have to protect things, which is a fine balancing act because when
Yeah.
you're performing risk assessments or you're cracking down on access management, that's another thing I do is identity and access management, like doing access reviews. So we had to segregate all the duties for access management, and people didn't want to let go of, their, I guess. So what I'm trying to say
They
is,
don't want to give up their job, but they don't want to like separate their things. Is what you're
yeah,
saying.
yeah, exactly. I couldn't find the words to say that, but yeah, in a
Yeah.
nutshell.
Going back to the incident response thing, being somebody with kind of no prior experience and then being put in that position to kind of not oversee incident response, but kind of make sure, I don't know if I can say orchestrate or make sure everything is in place. Was that like intimidating, or how did you get used to doing that?
So actually, I think one of the best learning experiences I had is I try to follow as many people who are bright in the field as I can on Twitter. I found is kind of the best place for that because people tend to post a lot more there. I found than other social media, and I ended up coming across this one follow. I couldn't remember who it was, but they posted these incident response playbooks, like a bunch of them, and they were super detailed with graphics and everything about what to do for pretty much every type of incident you could think of. They had one for business email compromise, ransomware, etc. So I learned a lot from just looking at their playbooks. It was basically just a step-by-step guide of exactly what to do during an incident. So that helped me out a lot. But really, like, there's nobody that taught me in the company. So
Oh yeah,
it
yeah.
was
Did
very challenging and intimidating because I was
yeah,
actually tasked with doing a tabletop test. And one of our guys in IT is very challenging. He's a really bright guy. And I get it too. It's like, why is this guy doing a tabletop test when he doesn't know as much as I do? You know what I mean? So that was a huge learning experience. All I can say is if you're ever in a governance role and you're doing some type of presentation, if you're going to talk about something, be prepared to know the rabbit holes that it can lead down and be able to come back to certain questions people have, or else it'll be a pretty rough experience.
yeah. I know a lot of people like including even me like have imposter syndrome, and people worry about like what if someone asks me something I don't know, or what if just I'm expected to know something I don't know it. Like how did you deal with those in that situation where you have like the really smart guy and you're new? Like how did you handle that for all the viewers who might be
So
scared?
do you mean kind of just like a tough coworker?
Yeah, so like you said like the guy maybe he has the perspective of like why is Derek running the tabletop when I'm like so good. Like how do you handle those situations where like somebody asks you something and you don't know it, or you just like don't know their answer? Do you have like a method of dealing with that, or what are your thoughts in general?
No, not really. And how can you? You know what I mean? Like if you don't know the answer, you don't know the answer. And I think the best thing in that situation is just to be honest. And that's kind of why I had said, kind of really preparing, especially for something like that, which I don't think many people are gonna do that specifically, but really in terms of like any type of presentation to other people in the company, just
Yeah.
be prepared for where it can go and try to really know your stuff as much as you can before going into it. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm kind of in the same camp. If I don't know, just do my best to prepare, and if I don't know, just like be honest, because it's easy for someone to tell, like if you're saying something like doesn't make sense,
Yeah, I mean, some of these guys have been doing it for 20, 30 years, and
Yeah,
I mean, honesty is a good policy. You've seen it in if you ever read the Discord about people who get jobs, right, and they talk about their interviews. Being honest about not knowing something and then saying, well, I will learn it though, and having that willingness, that's that'll get you hired if we're talking about, you know, interviewing. People can sniff BS from a mile away if they've been doing that type of work and in relation to the question.
yeah, yeah. And that reminds me. Do you mind if we talk about like how you found this job again and like your interview process and stuff?
I was starting to lose hope in the applications. I was really pumping those applications out. I was doing towards the end, out of just like frustration and anger, I started like doubling my numbers. I was doing like 20, 25 applications a day. Like at first, I started to just do cybersecurity jobs because I just wanted to, feel the waters and see if I'd get any bites on cybersecurity because I had no experience prior. And then I didn't get any hits. And then I started applying to help desk jobs. And then that's when I got the interview for this company. They did one round. They seemed like they really liked me, and then did a second round a couple days later. And then I thought I was ghosted. I didn't hear from them for like 3 weeks, I think. And then she reached out again saying there was a final round interview. And then they ghosted me again for like 2 weeks. Maybe It was a week or two. It feels longer than it is because when you're looking, and I wasn't working at the time, it feels like it's longer than it was. And then finally I got the offer. So
that's cool. So you had like a couple interviews and then just you got hired.
yeah, so I had 3 rounds. First round was with my current boss. Second round was with her and her boss, who's the chief risk officer. And then the last round was with the chief information officer as well. And I think I said this last time I spoke with you, but for context, I think I put out like 1,000 applications. And based on what I see from what other people say, is that's like what you should probably expect to put out if you don't have experience. Because people say it's hard to get into cybersecurity, to break in, but if you look in your Discord, you've seen that people are showing that it's definitely possible. You just have to really be persistent with it's been a minute since I looked at your list, but that was a pretty solid list of things that you should be doing, to really put yourself above and beyond. Because what people have to keep in mind is like it's a competition, right? That's why having projects on your resume goes a long way with showing that extra eagerness, because there's so many people out there. They might have gone to Harvard, but they don't show that going above and beyond, or it doesn't seem like they care. They just have their their internships. Your chances really go down.
Yeah, it's really important to I like to say, like, distinguish yourself from your peers. Like, do that extra thing, which is like sounds like what you did. So like on your resume, for anyone wondering like, oh, like, what your resume and stuff looked like, do you mind like talking about what you had done, like if you had any certifications or like what kind of projects you had before you started applying?
Yeah, I had Security Plus. I had worked in sales at AT&T, but I actually, a lot of my time there, I was going to people's houses, like home to home sales, and I would actually help people with their routers and their direct TV. So I did kind of spin that more as tech than it was. It was really more so sales, but so that was on there. Really, any type of experience that you can relate to what you're applying for, you should, especially with no other experience. I had Security Plus, and I had 2 projects. The one was from your course. The second one was actually another one of your projects. It was an Active Directory one.
Oh, really?
The PowerShell like automation to generate the users. So I put that, and I made a GitHub, and I added both of those to that. Made sure my LinkedIn looked really good. I think that's really important because I noticed I had LinkedIn Premium, like the free month trial. And when I was applying, I noticed that pretty much everyone who interviews you is looking at your LinkedIn. So you really want to make sure that that looks as good or better than your resume.
That's a good advice. Oh my gosh, I was going to ask some question, but I can't remember what it was. Oh, okay. You mentioned you worked in sales, and that kind of reminded me, like, having worked in your position as information security officer for a while, would you say there's like a relatively large like interpersonal component to cybersecurity, or like what are your thoughts on that?
For what I'm doing, definitely, because we have a monthly meeting, information security committee. So knowing how to talk to people and communicate your thoughts is huge in my role. I've had to present to executives, so and that helped too, because I used to live in like right across the bridge from Philly, so a lot of my jobs would be to rich areas. So I dealt with a lot of people who are high up the ladder in their corporate world. So that gave me a lot of experience with being able to communicate clearly and really make things, I guess, as simple as possible. Because if you're talking to executives, they don't want to know every technical detail. They just want to know the high level. They want metrics that matter.
Yeah, that's really important. They care about like well, depending on the exec, they care about like if they're losing money or how much money they're making, and like really like high level thing. And what you said is, in my opinion, like super correct, and it's something people don't really think about because we don't have like a speech plus like CompTIA speaking plus, or like some certification that
Yeah.
teaches us how to talk, but is really important. So I'm glad you touch on that.
Yeah, I did a lot of speaking in college and I was never good at it, like doing presentations, but it's just kind of one of those things where the more you do it, you just eventually get comfortable. So, I mean, and the same thing goes for interviewing. You just really, I was terrible at that too for a long time. Just the more you do it, the more you get comfortable. So don't,
Did you,
don't get too discouraged if you feel like you did bad. Just try to take deep breaths before and relax, open your body up. That helps big.
yeah.
Yeah, it like reduces your stress hormones. So
Did you practice interviewing at all, like by yourself, like doing star questions or anything? You just like went in there.
not in like in front of a mirror, but I definitely had answers to basically all the bullet points because this job especially I really wanted. So and that made a difference to me. How much I wanted the job, I would really prepare a lot more for basically any question that they could ask me.
Oh, that's good. This is kind of like a random question. I was just thinking about it because your role is like a bit diverse. It sounds like you're doing some like incident response and security training and some other stuff. After having done all that, if you were to pick an ideal job for your next job, like what would you be doing?
Definitely something in incident response or possibly even pen testing. I find myself getting a little bit bored, not because I don't, like I said before, I don't really have anybody to learn from. Like, I'm really leaning towards like either consulting, incident response, or pen testing, something where there's like a lot of action and a lot of it's something new every day because I'm young, right? Like, I want to learn as much as I can. And what I'm doing now kind of, I feel like stagnates your learning, especially if like there's incidents don't really happen if you, I mean they do, but very minor ones if you have a really strong security program at your company. You know what I mean? I mean, there's no such thing as 100% security. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that, but
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not like we don't really see incidents.
yeah, yeah. I
Digital
gotcha.
forensics sounds really cool though.
Oh yeah, that was
Like
what I
malware now.
originally. Yeah. Oh, like the hardcore one, like you're doing like what is that, assembly and all that.
Yeah, or like like just sandboxing and just seeing how different malware reacts. That'd be pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. That's like one of those hard technical roles. It sounds fun though.
Yeah, definitely different from what I'm doing now.
Yeah, and the thing where you said about you don't really have someone who's like better than you that you can like go and get help to. I know what you mean. Not in the sense that like we're really good or something. There just isn't that person in our org, and it gets like for me, I've had that kind of same scenario a few times, and I feel like, well, like what am I doing here? Am I doing like a good job? Like I don't have like a mentor to talk to. So I kind of I get what you're saying. I've had that like a few times. But yeah,
Yeah, it's a weird feeling. Just something you I guess have to get over.
yeah. As somebody who again entered the field without any really prior background, you had some kind of like sales like slash tech a little bit. For someone who entered like a good security role without any background, what kind of advice would you give the viewers who are watching?
I think a lot of it just comes down to personality, really. I don't mean that in a way where if you're like if you're antisocial or something, you're not going to get hired. But being really enthusiastic about the job that you're applying for, I think, goes a long way. And like I said before, you really have to just be able to differentiate yourself because you're in competition with everybody else who's applying. So how can you make yourself look better than somebody who has more experience than you? And it's pretty easy to do, believe it or not, because from what I've seen, I've done a lot of research before I've made my resume. A lot of the people out there, I've seen their resumes, they post them on Reddit, who've been in the field for a long time, get laid off, and their resumes are terrible. No offense to them, maybe they're really good and they just expect to get hired, but you have to be able to communicate what you're good at, or else you're not going to get hired. So
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I have like this thing I made, the employability framework, and it pretty much all boils down to like you have to convince someone to give you an interview, and then once that happens, you have to convince them to hire you. Those are like the only two things that you really care about, or that you should care about. If your resume is bad, you can't even convince someone to give you an interview, right? Even if you were good, you have to like, the game is like, convincing them somehow,
yeah.
right? Yeah, that's good. Very good. Any kind of like final thoughts or questions or anything you want to get out?
I mean, really just people. So one thing that I've seen in your Discord, and I'm not calling people out, but if you're applying to a ton of jobs, right, and you've gotten to 200, 300, 500 applications out, and you haven't gotten a single interview, then you got to change your resume, right? Your resume probably sucks. Let's be honest. So so really, like, make sure that that stuff is good, and like you just have to be able to pick up on how your application process is going. You have to be able to just really dissect, like, why am I not getting to the next step? Or if you have a lot of interviews but you're not making it to the next stage, you really have to do some self-reflecting and go on Reddit. Reddit's probably my favorite place because it's real people, and there's a lot of smart people on Reddit, and they'll tell you they're smart too. But they have a lot of good advice there, and they'll roast your resume, which I think is really helpful, or any of your processes for finding a job. So I think that that's a really good resource for troubleshooting your application process.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking of Reddit, kind of reminds me of the fact that a lot of the time, people will be posting on like CS career questions or some other, tech forum. Like, I submitted 500 like resumes, and I have a master's degree in Security Plus, and I couldn't get an interview. Like, I don't want like viewers like seeing that to get discouraged, because we don't actually know like what their resume looks like and what's on it. Like you said, it could look really bad, and it probably does if they're not getting response after like 500 applications with some decent credentials. Something's probably wrong with their resume, like you said. So
Yeah.
you just have to like be aware of that. Don't get discouraged when you see people complaining about that, because we don't know like what they're doing, right?
And be willing to have someone tell you your resume sucks, because if they're telling you that, it's probably for a good reason. And don't get discouraged, because nobody's good at good at building resumes the first time they do it. It's an iterative process, and it's a learning process.
Yes. And then all this resume talk, I'll put like a link in the description to like a template that you can use. It should be like an okay, not you. Well, you can use it, but the viewers, if they want. Yeah, it was really nice chatting with you. I think this is going to be really helpful for people to kind of give them some perspective and stuff. And I respect what you did a lot, because you put a lot of work in, and you got like, minimal background, cool job, and then you have to deal with like a lot of kind of stressful stuff, especially as a new person. So I just want to commend you for those.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. I think that's just what happens when you start a new role. It's uncomfortable experience for pretty much anyone, unless you're going from like SOC analyst level 1 to level 2. Everyone's gonna have that imposter syndrome feeling. You just have to get over it, and you will.
Yeah, just do your best. I tell people, like, if you feel like you have imposter syndrome, it means you'll probably do a good job and you care about your work. So,
Yeah,
just,
that's good
do your
advice.
yeah. Just do your best. It sounds like that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Derek. Really appreciate it, and we'll like see you in Discord or something.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Josh.